will be doing a practical presentation in the studio. As you can see, it's already been set up. Now, Liesl is head of education at Zeitz MOCAA, and she believes that education in and through the creative and visual arts is a powerful tool for positive change, healing, developing a sense of identity, and bringing a sense of enjoyment and excitement to learning. The vision for the Zeitz MOCAA Center for the Arts Education is to provide a meaningful museum experience for all audiences, whatever their age, background, or expectations. Over to you, Liesl.
Hi, everybody. And thank you so much, Anna. That was a lovely introduction. Teachers, welcome to the session, and other visitors who are also perhaps observing the session as well. We have a very short time. I'm going to show you an art lesson. It's actually not one lesson, but it's actually a project that can be done over a series of 5 lessons within a term. And it is a differentiated lesson. Therefore, it's using different mediums and techniques at different times. And you can actually break this lesson up into about 5 different lessons. So I'm going to jump right in because our time is short. Okay, and to say to you, I just want you to focus on this piece of paper in the background. So I'm going to stand a little bit. Okay, so our lesson today is focusing on the rhino or rhinoceros. Okay, I want to talk to you today about ways in which you can make this a cross-curricular experience for your learners, and where you can actually use the other learning disciplines and the other learning areas to enrich the learning about this particular creature. So this is an art lesson. I'm from the Zeitz MOCAA, and a couple of years ago in 2019, we had a very big retrospective exhibition of William Kentridge, which opened in 2019. And so the lesson today is going to be inspired by his work. So the lesson is about art and art history. Okay, I open my little piece of paper here. I love paper, guys. So I'm a kind of old school, non-digital teacher. Okay, we see William's drawings in the middle of rhinoceroses, and those are his 2. We also see other drawings of other artists in the way that they've actually used that rhino in some way. Then, of course, there is the area of design. You heard, if you were listening to our opening talk with Marlene LaRue, that she spoke about the importance of design. Okay, so you can also use this particular content or this theme or the rhino as subject matter for a design project, and you can also show learners the different kinds of design projects that you can get. So poster making, obviously that's something that we know a lot, but there are other sort of design campaigns that have taken place over the years. For example, I work close to the waterfront, and so the campaign around the painted rhinos in various places at the waterfront. Some of you may have seen that if you live and work in Cape Town. So those are the art-related subjects. But of course, your learners are also doing other subjects, and you may be teaching other subjects. So, for example, in social sciences, okay, you can look at issues around Africa. For example, we're going to look at the rhino and what it symbolizes in terms of William Kentridge's use of this creature, okay? And that is related to the history of Africa, to colonialism, and all of that. Children have to know those words, they have to understand them, and so it is a way also of introducing that learning area to your teaching. Then there's also very obviously, there is the natural science subject area that you can explore. You're looking there at ecosystems, you are looking at mammals, you are looking at issues around conservation, obviously, when we speak about the rhino. I didn't know that there were 5 different kinds of rhinos in the world. Did you know that? I'm fascinated. There's an Indian rhino, okay? There is a Sumatran rhino, and there's a rhino from Java, all of the rhinos in the world are endangered. And almost 300 years ago, in 1741, a rhino was actually taken around Europe and put on display for people to see this exotic creature. So 5 different rhinos in the world. I think that's really amazing. Also, rhinos were associated with power, with kings and with authority. And so that's why Europe really at the time enjoyed seeing this creature, and so on. So natural sciences, history, social sciences, and then of course there's language. This may go off your screen a little bit, and I apologize for that. But I was also researching sort of poems about rhinos. There's a very beautiful one by Edmund B. Strolis, which you can Google, which describes the rhino on the plains. And it's a short poem. It's really very beautiful. And then something that's a bit more quirky called the Rhino Rhyme that relates to conservation. So you can pick up these links everywhere. And of course, there are stories. If you're teaching younger learners, primary school learners, there are lots of stories about rhinos, how the rhinos got their particular skin. The rhino whose horn was kind of hairy and floppy, and he wanted a sharp horn, and so on. These are children's stories that you can access, read to children, base your language exercises on it, etc. And then last but not least is also technology. Okay, and today's lesson, we're going to look at the particular function of a wheel and axle construction in doing this art lesson. So you're not just teaching an art lesson about a rhino, okay? You are teaching every aspect about that animal from a historical and natural science perspective, how the animal is described in language, and all of those things. And you can base all of the exercises that you need to do on that. It's a way of also working smarter. I know that there's a curriculum where you have to cover particular outcomes and so on, but want to encourage you to work creatively with that curriculum and to see what the links are that you can make in the different sections. I think that's also what we're saying is important for this conference in terms of looking at integrated learning, fusion learning, project-based learning, which are all slightly different, but all have a similar core or a seed within them. So I'm going to just show you quickly the William Kentridge package, which I used and which I wrote for the museum. It's an education package that teachers, we had several workshops with teachers, and we've had workshops around the Western Cape, where I put together basic information about William Kentridge. He's an artist. He's probably one of the, possibly one of the most well-known South African artists internationally, and a very successful artist. And his work is very complex. Some teachers may veer away from it and say it's too serious or it's complicated. I don't know how to teach it to my children. I don't know where to start with Kentridge. And so I devised these text cards, which are loose leaf information that one could use, just introducing his work and then looking at various aspects of his work, from his drawings to his animated drawings, printmaking, sculpture, all of those mediums that Kentridge worked in. And then it also had beautiful sort of very high-res reproductions of the artworks that were not only in the museum, but some other artworks that I thought was important for the package. This package also folded out so that you could use it as a poster in your class. If you don't have access to the internet, to digital things, there's lots of information about William Kentridge on the internet that you can Google. But if you have none of that, then something like this works really well in the classroom. And then based on that package, we actually did a project with the Peter Clark Art Center in Cape Town, and we invited their schools and their children to come into the museum. You'll see the book in front of me and a group of children around one of the William Kentridge sculptures. And they devised this booklet of all the art lessons that they were inspired to do at the center. And that exhibition opened, ironically, a day before lockdown in 2020, in March 2020. And so the exhibition lived very quietly during the year in our classroom spaces. And then slowly when things began opening up, we kept it up for a little longer so that people could see that. And so this is something that with one artist, one exhibition, I used to know how many lessons were in this book, but this morning I started counting and then I got interrupted. But I think there's well over 20 art lessons in this booklet that you can actually use to teach William Kentridge. So let's actually start with the art project. I'm very much a teacher that encourages the use of accessible, affordable resources as far as is possible, knowing what budgets are like in schools, and that the arts is always kind of the Cinderella that gets the latter parts of budgets. And you do need to have materials when you teach art. That is a fact. So to work with materials that are affordable and accessible, very important to me. Okay, so what are we going to do? We're going to start out with an observational drawing of a rhino. Okay, it is important for children to learn how to draw and how to observe things in the real world. Now you're saying to me, yeah, but some children haven't ever seen a rhino. Perhaps they haven't, maybe they've seen it on television or in a book. Okay, maybe if they've seen images like this. Okay, there's some rhinos at the bottom there. Okay, so these are very stylized images of animals. So we don't want to show them and let them work from that example. What we do want to show them are examples, and these have been taken from calendars, from magazines, of what the actual animal looks like in reality. And we want them to work with those images. So you want to choose good quality images to have for your classes. These have been beautifully laminated. They can be put on the desk. So whether you're drawing or painting, they can just be wiped off and they can be used over and over again. So visual resources in your room and in your art room, in your class is really, really important. Okay. I just wanted to show you that this is actually a painting of a rhino. So possibly paintings like this can be used as well, even though this is an artwork and not actually a photograph of a real rhino, but this is a representative image and very accurate rendering of what a rhino looks like. So you can do those as well. And then if you're lucky enough to find images like this with the close-ups of the beautiful folded skin, the mud on the hide of the rhino and so on, that's also really great. So you'll start out drawing your rhino, okay? And when you start, you need to know how big your format needs to be, and you need to know where you are going to in your project and what it is that you want to do. So for this project, the rhino has to be fairly small. And for this project, the rhino has to fit onto this piece of card. Now, having said that, where did I get this cardboard from? I didn't buy it at an art shop. It was actually inside a sock. That was given to me as a gift. Okay, so even things like that are really important. So I'm going to ask Ame to just pass one of my folded boxes here and show you that these are all offcuts of other projects. They're old postcards, okay, and they're all made with really good paper. All right, and so in terms of the sustainability of this subject, in terms of our planet and all of those things, make yourself a box, take a cardboard box, a shoe box, and collect all the paper from other projects. Don't throw anything away because everything is really valuable. So there my rhino is. And for this one, because they're drawing small, I'm not always a fan of pencils because children want to rub pencil drawings out endlessly. You can say to them, I'm giving you a pencil, but there's no rubbers. Okay. So I'm very happy as a teacher to actually not give learners erasers because they sit forever and wanting to rub out. So there's my rhino. It's two legs in the background. The rhino's actually got a fairly thick tail. Okay, it's got very sort of hairy ears, if you look closely. And then the African rhino, the white rhino and the black rhino, okay, is a smaller horn and a bigger horn. All right. The white rhino is the grazer, and the black rhino plucks things off bushes. So his mouth is slightly more pointed and so on. So there's your rhino drawn for you. Okay, and we're going to get back to what we're going to do with that. But this is something that's going to be cut out for the rest of the project. So we've drawn our rhino. They've looked at what a real rhino is. You can make it a fairly detailed drawing if you want. They can look at texture, they can look at tone, all of those. So let's move on to the next part of the project. So that is one lesson, or you may want to introduce the artist as one lesson first. Okay. And let's go on to the next part of it. So those of you who may have been in workshops with me before that have joined this conference will know that I love a paper plate because it's something that's really versatile and accessible, and it's basically cardboard that you don't have to go and buy at an art shop. And these paper plates often have these concentric circles which are embossed in the middle. So the next part of the lesson is that your learners will get 2 plates each for this particular lesson. And with the one plate, you'll see I have created a dotted line there, which I always let my learners do first before I give them the scissor. And you can do it with black crayon as well, so that you can see things. You can do it with the color so that they see things and so that they are getting a sense of what that circle is and so on. And then we're going to cut it out. Okay. And this is going to form one part of this circular artwork that's going to do what William Kentridge's artworks often do, and that is that they move. He animates his artwork in various ways, whether it's through strange 3-dimensional sculptures that have been put together in fragments, whether it's through video, or whether he takes objects like old gramophones and sewing machines and he uses the mechanics of those things to make his artworks move. So there's the inner circle, which we're going to talk about later. And then the bigger circle is this one, okay? And for this one, we're going to put a hole in the middle. And I really do it very easily with a scissor. I just put my scissor into the middle and I make the hole. As a teacher, you can decide whether you want to actually do those things for your learners and pre-prep some of those materials, okay? Here, for this project, we are going to use 4 rhinos, okay? And I've kind of done different things with the rhinos. So I have a drawing of a rhino, which I've done with more detail on it. I have a more silhouetted rhino that I've just covered actually with magazine paper, okay? I've got another silhouetted rhino here. And when you work over black paper with a pencil, you get this wonderful silvery gray effect. And it's really actually quite beautiful. You can also, onto black paper, of course, use white wax crayon. Please buy the thick wax crayon if you are going to use them for your learners, not the thin ones that won't actually survive longer than a lesson. So you can do things like that. And we can talk about other ways to do the rhino. You're going to need 4 rhinos for this lesson. So once you've drawn your rhino, you're going to cut it out. And then you use the cut out rhino as the template for the other 3, so that you have 4 of them all together. I'm not going to cut that whole thing out. Okay. Then the next part of the lesson is to look at, and we can speak about in terms of your integrated learning and environment, and also think about the environment that a rhino lives in. So the African rhino lives on the grasslands of Africa. What does that look like? Again, you can show them pictures of what this environment is, why it is that they live there, what it is that they eat, all of those. Rhinos are mammals, but they are herbivores, and so they eat grass, etc., etc. So I'm going to show you what you can do with a leftover piece of the paper plate, okay, and also what you can do, which is going to kind of be the background of this artwork that we're looking at. So I'm going to ask Ame to pass me my circles. There we go. Thank you so much. And so Another very accessible material, okay, and I always say to teachers are magazine colors from magazines, okay. Tear these pages out yourself first, okay, so that learners don't spend hours and hours looking at the magazine, which always fascinates them, okay. And you can really tear out things. So, you know, I've torn out black, for example, and used it on the black rhino. You get really beautiful saturated reds and greens and even blues, okay? So use magazines, ask family for magazines, ask the children to bring in magazines, newspapers, sometimes have color in them as well. Use that resource if you don't have things like fancy paints and pastels and so on, okay? And so what I've done with that outer circle, with a big plate first, so let me show you that first, is I've used those magazine papers and I've created the colors of the African grassland, okay, and I've stuck it onto my plate. You can stick it with Prit glue. These are quite expensive. If you have resources, great, but if you don't have this, then there's the school glue that you can use, this white glue. I thin it out so that it runs, okay, and then you simply paint it on the plate and then you stick your pieces of magazine paper like that. And you need very little for each child. And then once you've got it, and so what I've done is I've just layered the pieces by tearing the paper. I haven't made a picture necessarily. I've created the textures and the colors of the grassland. And then when they're all stuck, you can simply just go around the edge and cut off the bits that are sticking out. So that is my background plate, but we don't throw anything away. And sometimes the bits that we cut give us ideas for interesting things to do with lessons. So this piece here, I've cut in different ways, and you can make a relief as part of the outside for that circle. We're going to come to that inside in a minute, okay? I've done, and I've cut it in different ways, guys. So here I've done the kind of very regular cuts. There I've made a different kind of cut and I've edged the grass with black. Yeah, I've made a very kind of what I call a stylized creation of three-dimensional grass. You can obviously color that. You can create some kind of pattern. You can get learners to count in three. So 1, 2, every third one. Okay, and they can count 3, 6, 9. So times tables, mathematics, all of those things are possible. The other things that do happen in the grasslands is sometimes there are fires and veld fires. So you may not want to create grass, but maybe you want to create a fiery background. So this one I've done with collage. That one I've done with pastel. And again, it makes different sort of combinations and effects. And then this one I've actually done using a stick and ink. You don't need fancy fine liners that won't last anyway, and that are very expensive, okay? I've just used a very ordinary drawing ink. This particular make, I don't know whether I'm allowed to advertise makes, but it's a really saturated, beautiful ink, and you can get a really good black line. So I've actually diluted that with water 5:1, and you can actually make really beautiful drawings on this plate with a kebab stick that I've got here. And you can get a packet of 100 of those kebab sticks from Spar, Checkers, Pick and Pay, wherever it is. And you can actually draw, and this paper plate takes that ink really well. Okay, so if you want a beautiful black line that's not as static as Koki lines and so on, you can use that as well. And this kind of black and white drawing with all of these textures, again, if you've introduced Kentridge and you've shown them some of his work, is very reminiscent of William Kentridge's work. That's the outside. Let's move to the inside of the plate. So we're going to do something now with the inside of the plate, okay? So, and I want to show you different things that I have done. So first of all, I've used the technique of what I've called crayon engraving. It works really well on the paper plate, and it is different to just drawing or painting, and it gives you very, very beautiful textural finishes on your plate. So if you take the conservation route of saving the rhino, or if you want to write a poem on here, or maybe you just want a decorative pattern, you can do anything, okay? No art lesson is ever set in stone, and you want to create an art lesson that's yours and that you enjoy, okay? So I've just used the sort of save the rhino, and I've done the crayon engraving by covering the surface of the cardboard with white crayon first. What I did for that is I actually wrote in black, save the rhino, so that I could see the lettering, and that guided me when I had to do the scratching out. So you do a layer of white and you press really hard. You're going to get this crayon dust happening, okay? So you may want newspapers on the desk or bits of paper under the kids, but wax crayons are absolutely beautiful materials to use in your class. I actually, a lot of the time, I prefer wax to oil pastels even. And then when you've got your entire area covered, let's say you just want a series of patterns inspired by the rhino's horn or the oxpecker bird that actually often you see on the rhino's back. Why? Because it removes the ticks and the parasites from the rhino's hide, and it protects, so the relationship is a kind of symbiotic one. Okay, so you can talk about things like symbiosis, all of those things. And then the more you scratch out, okay, the more beautiful your effect is. So often children just want to do one line, okay? You want to encourage them to really thicken that line so that the beautiful white comes through and so on. And of course, you can do this with a color under the black first if you want a sort of monochromatic effect. And so on. So whatever you do, you can see I've actually removed a lot of the background. So, and it's given this wonderful sort of cross-hatched textural background. So now I've got a circle and a big circle, and we want to put it together now on the structure. So I'm going to do this very quickly and show you how I've done it. And so here's where technology comes into play. And I always say these rolled paper sticks changed art teaching for me. It meant I didn't need wire or wood or clay or anything like that. And it sort of helped me to appreciate three-dimensional making, and it encouraged me to do construction. They are made out of a sheet of magazine paper, which you roll up very tightly. You just point that corner to the one on the opposite end, and then you start sort of making really fine folds in the paper, about 10 of them, and then you literally roll that entire stick up as tightly and as solidly as possible to get that. And this stick you can do amazing things with. So it bends, it can make circles, and it really replaces wire. I've used one to cut the stick in half, and then I've made this little stand, which we will need, okay? And then just 2 other sticks to create the axle of the wheel and axle. And I want to just encourage you to experiment. So I've just taken the one stick like this, and you will need masking tape for the construction. You can buy 2 rolls of masking tape. Not every child needs a roll. And what I do is I walk around the class, I take a long piece and I stick it on their shoulder and I say, there's your masking tape, okay? And it works like a charm. So I put 1 stick on that side, 1 on the other, and so I'm creating a fairly kind of solid axle. I'm sorry, I'm being a bit awkward because I'm rushing. I've got 5 minutes to show you. On the other side, and so on. Then you bring it together in the middle. Now that's going to go through your holes in the plate. And then I create a little bearing so that when you put the plate on, it doesn't fall through. So I'm using all those technological words, reinforcing, bearings, axle, wheels, how the structure works. And it's got everything to do with technology. In fact, this whole lesson is about paper technology, right? So we put a hole in our plate. And we make a nice big hole because we want the plate to move. So I even just do that with a scissor, pop it on, okay? Then you put another bearing on because you want a space between your turning wheels. So another little bearing goes on like that, okay? And you can test the turning. If it doesn't turn nicely, you can cut it again. And then I'm cutting the hole out of my small circle. And what I'm doing is I'm just going to use a stapler very quickly. You can glue, you know, if it's in lesson time and you've got time, and I'm putting the 4 rhinos and stapling them to the round circle. Final one, sorry, I should have alternated the light and the dark rhino, but it doesn't matter. 1 minute. So you put that on top, and there you have your moving plate and your rhino circles, like William Kentridge often does, is that his sections move. I would maybe put 2 bearings on this so that you get better movement, so that it doesn't sit one on top of the other and kind of interfere with the movement, okay? And then all you'll do with this stick here is that you'll cut, you can cut it off. This is where you're going to have to help learners. And I'll put a little bit. Remember, you're not taping things to the axle because you want movement, right? But I would do 2 bearings, and so that you have a little bit more space. And there is your kind of spinning, drawing, artwork, whatever. If you wanted to put it up against the wall and show them how it functioned, you can also hold it like that, and you can turn it, and it can be displayed against the wall as well. Those things can be stuck against a board. So there we go. And whatever the combination is, you can do this as a completely monochromatic lesson. If you just want black and white, you can do a black and white background. If you want the contrast, it works. It works really well. Okay, and we are done. The only thing we didn't really do is to put a relief addition onto the back circle like that, so that it makes for an interesting background. Okay, everybody, questions. I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has, or comments, or whatever. And Angela's just going to bring up the questions to see. So obviously I've done this very quickly, teachers, and but again, this is a project that you can teach over 4 or 5 weeks, you know, depending on how complex you want the project to be, and how many additions you want to sort of add to the artwork. What is always great about a differentiated art lesson with different mediums is that your artwork becomes richer. So it's not just, and there's nothing wrong with just a drawing on paper. Drawings can be really beautiful. But every so now and again, you want your learners to experience different things, and you want something that actually, yeah, that is richer in terms of medium and so on. Okay.
Liesl, did you get that question? There is a question they asked about which grade or phase is this lesson designed for? Okay, so this for me would be the sort of older intermediate children. So I would say from grade 5. And although grade 4s are okay, foundation phase children won't be able to roll the paper stick. Okay, if you did it with foundation phase, you'd have to roll the sticks and prep some of the cardboard, and you may want to do a very simple version, for example, by just using, if you had access to these, it's called a split pin, where you could put it through the big and the small circle, and then it would just move as a flat sort of image. But sort of older intermediate phase, I would do this with grade 8 and 9.
where they can really go to town on their wheel and axle construction, and you can speak to them about the sort of history of rhinos. William Kentridge uses animals, and this is what I didn't say in the beginning, in his artwork to speak to the human condition. His work is often around social injustices that have taken place over histories in various parts of the world. So he doesn't only speak about apartheid South Africa, and he uses and makes reference to animals to kind of show either the very dark side of human nature or the vulnerable side of human nature. So in his rhino drawings, he actually draws the rhino as if the rhino is being operated like a puppet. So something like a rhino that's powerful, beautiful animal has been reduced to this sort of victim of what happens. And we know that kind of after 1914, there was a scramble for Africa and all the European countries wanted to colonize. And so each country took their particular piece. Italy took Ethiopia and so on and so on. We know the things that have happened. So you can talk to them about that history. Does it have to be from the curriculum? I don't think so. It's enriching learning, really. And if you can bring it into your teaching, why not? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think there's another one they asked, could you adapt this for grade 7 or 6?
Absolutely.
And is this only for specific age? I think you have answered.
Yes, that. Yeah. So for me, right through intermediate through to senior phase, would I think really enjoy this. And you can, as I say, you can go to town with this. You can paint if you want to introduce paint. And I say this, if you're teaching in your classroom and you don't have an art room, is to, and if you can afford it in your budget, to get these paints, because actually they're not bad in terms of their color, all right? And you don't have to mix, powder paint and things like that. The only thing that I want to say about this is don't, after an art lesson, leave the paint looking like that, because when the next child has to use it, this is a mess and it doesn't work for the next child. And orange has got black on it and yellow's contaminated. So you take them and you rinse them under the tap very lightly. You rub it with your finger so that every time you have to use it, you use it like this. So they're little things that you'll discover over time. But I also want to say you'll only discover these things if you are doing it yourself. Okay, you actually have to do the lesson yourself so that you understand where the pitfalls are, but you also understand the variations. So you're going to get children who are going to say, Miss, can I do this? Can I do that? And even though all the children are doing the same project, their work is going to turn out very differently. They're going to make different decisions about how the rhino looks or whether they want to collage it or, depending on how you give that instruction and how tight you want to keep it. Part of an art lesson is also to give the structure and the steps so that they're learning skills and techniques. But there's a part of the lesson where you also want them to explore their own creativity. So at what point do you let go? At what point in this lesson would you say to a learner, right, you can decide what goes in the middle, or you can decide how you want to do your rhinos. You give them some choice, but maybe the previous sections of the lesson is to actually keep it quite tight and to get them to do things in a particular way so that you're teaching skill and you're allowing for creativity. And you need to create that balance.
And I think these are what a lot of teachers might be asking this, because it was such an amazing session and so compact with so many things they probably didn't take notes. They just need to know that on this amazing app, that this video, this recording will be on there for the next 3 months.
That's amazing.
And you are also there as a presenter, your details, and they will be able to contact you directly.
Absolutely. So please feel free to do that. I am at the museum, but I'm very happy to connect with teachers. I love that. And I love sharing what I've learned in my career. So yeah. Great.
I think that is the one thing with this webinar. They said on the left-hand side, they discussed a lot of technical things in the beginning of this whole session of the conference. And they say with the community as well, where they can start connecting with people. But like I said, the main thing is if they want to connect with you directly and they can start a chat session and you can join in on that. So I think that's phenomenal. Yes.
I think that's really great. This is an amazing opportunity, teachers, to create a community of teachers, because often it's very isolating. being the only creative arts teacher in a school or an art teacher at a high school. And here you can actually get support. The only reason why I learned things as an art teacher is because I had other art teachers that I learned from, and that I could share ideas with or ask questions. So try and do that, and try and create a community. If you're the only art teacher at a school, go to neighboring schools and see where you can create that community within your own environments and your own contexts.
And there's one more question.
Yes.
This is I'm a PGCE full-time creative arts and visual arts teacher at Stadio School of Education. What advice would you give a novice teacher who is just about to start her career, such as me? I think the community things.
Yes, so I think gather a community around you. You can go to a school and introduce yourself to an art teacher perhaps, and see if there is someone that can support your practice by showing you examples. Plan really well is what I want to say to you, because you're always going to divert from the plan. But if you've got no plan, or you haven't done good planning, lessons go awry, okay? And particularly when you've got big classes, you really want to plan very tightly. So for a lesson like this, for example, you may want to say, actually, I don't want to give learners too many options because it's going to be a chaotic situation. So I'm really just going to let them do it step by step. The things that learners love is that they are experiencing creativity and they're doing art. So even if it is quite step by step and tight, at least they're getting that opportunity. And I've been sitting at a desk, guys, so I can do this on a small desk. And yeah, don't forget that as a creative teacher, you are a creator. So you have to make these things, okay? Make art as much as possible as a novice teacher, because that is going to give you the confidence to teach it.
Fantastic. I think we're out of time.
We're
There
out
are
of time.
still some questions, but they have been answered.
Yeah.
I think that the conversation doesn't end here, Liesl. They can connect with you, and any
Absolutely
more
not.
questions they want, they can connect through this app or your email.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and novice teachers, this is the beginning of a really amazing journey. So stick with it. It's not easy in the beginning if you are not an artist per se, but if you give it time, and you really want to make a difference in children's learning, then stick with it, because it becomes incredibly rewarding, especially when you're doing this kind of integrated and cross-curricular learning. Thanks very much, everybody. And yeah, feel free to contact me. My details will be on the platform. Go well and good luck. And yeah, amazing doing this with so many people who I can't see, but who I know are out there. Thank you. Bye-bye.